LED stands for light emitting diode. A diode is a semiconductor device that allows current to flow in only one direction. The first LEDs were developed in 1962 by Nick Holonyak Jr. at General Electric. An incandescent bulb works by passing electricity through a thin wire called the filament. As electricity flows, the filament heats up over 2,000 degrees Celsius. This extreme heat makes it glow and produce light. Most of the energy is turned into heat rather than light, which makes it inefficient. That's why incandescent bulbs feel hot to the touch. LEDs work completely different from their incandescent counterparts. Instead of using heat, they use a semiconductor. In an atom, electrons exist at different energy levels. When you put a lot of atoms together in a solid, those levels form bands. The valence band holds electrons, while the conduction band is where electrons can move freely. The space between them is called the band gap. Conductors, like copper wire, have a valence band that is not filled up with electrons completely. So when an electric field is applied, the electrons can move freely through the solid. Insulators, like rubber, have a valence band that is full, and the band gap is too large to allow for the electrons to jump to the conduction band, so that this causes the electrons to not move. Semiconductors, on the other hand, or semiconductor crystals, have a band gap that is small, so electrons can jump between the valence band and the conduction band more easily. LEDs use two different types of semiconductors: N-type, which has an extra electron, and P-type, which has missing electrons or holes. These different types are formed after you do a process called doping. This is when you intentionally add impurities to the semiconductor crystal lattice. If you add phosphorus to silicon semiconductor, you'll add a valence electron. This has another donor level right under the conduction band, and when a charge is applied, the electrons in the level jump to the conduction band. This is known as an N-type semiconductor. N for negative, since there are electrons that are negative. If you add boron, it adds one less valence electron, so it adds one acceptor band right above the valence band. Electrons from the valence band can jump to it, allowing the flow of electrons. This is called P-type semiconductor, P for positive. When you put them together, electrons naturally diffuse from the N-type and the P-type. This creates an electric field between the two. They continue to diffuse over until the electric field is so large it prevents them from coming over, creating a region called the depletion region. This zone is the depletion of mobile charge carriers. But when you apply electricity, the zone gets smaller and electrons start to flow. When they do, they can jump the band gap and release energy in the form of a photon. Unlike incandescent bulbs, LEDs don't waste energy as heat. They turn most of the electricity into light, making them way more efficient. The size of the band gap, measured in EVs, or electron volts, controls the color of the light. Bigger gaps creates blue light, smaller gaps create a red light. That's how we can make LEDs in all different colors. To make an LED, you sandwich the N-type and P-type together between an active layer. LEDs use an active layer to increase the flow of electrons and in turn brightness. This shrinks the band gap just a little at the junction of the P and N types, allowing more flow of electrons. The active layer contains a quantum well and a quantum barrier. The well is the part that shrinks the band gap, and the barrier increases the band gap to act as a barrier preventing spillover of electrons from the junction.